right. I have the amazing Shelby McSwords here, and Shelby is amazing. And Shelby went into musical theater program and definitely had an experience there. And today Shelby's going to talk a little bit about what that was like and maybe some challenges or some difficulties and maybe what it's like to grow up in a small town and then kind of all of a sudden be in a very, very big pond and what that experience is like.
Right, yeah. So starting with the idea of like being in a small town, you kind of grew up with the same people, the same performance groups, and there are a few of us, like me and like Ethan Pugh was another one. We were constantly like at the top of the cast list, and that was something that we started getting known for. And so there was partly an expectation, but also our desire to go into musical theater. I learned starting my sophomore, I think, year in high school, how different it would be just by going to Columbus and being like, okay, different people, different talent pool, different expectations. But then even still, I kind of felt just like, I don't know, like I had so much to offer, blah, blah, blah. But when you go to college, you realize just how much you don't know. That was the biggest thing. And like, it was such a process to get into Otterbein. You had to get into pre-screens, and they accepted, I think, around 500 people to audition in person, and then they accepted 5 girls in the class. So it's a very, very selective program, and you have to realize the caliber of people that it takes to get in there. And when you go and like watch an Otterbein show, if you're interested, I highly encourage you to watch an Otterbein show. They're doing something rotten this year, a little plug there. But it is professional level. It is. We have our head of the department right now, TJ Gerkins. He is a Tony Award nominated. I can't remember if he's won or not, but anyways, Tony Award nominated lighting designer that you work side by side with, and that's just insane to work with that caliber of people, not just on performance level, but on design level, which also you just don't see in community theater. You're like, we do this all ourselves. So to be in a space where everything is just insane is so cool, but also very stressful, because whatever came easily to me also already came easily to a lot of other people. I was not the only one of a certain type cast in my program. There was others there's basically like one of each type in each class. And so you're like, okay, so I'm up against ABC for this part. And so-and-so's probably going to get it because they're in the class above me, which is all well and good. And you get to learn from that person, and it's fantastic. But it's another planet being next to these people and competing with these people. Then when you don't really feel like you're competing, and then you're fighting for everything, not only in the cast list but also in class, you're able to learn from so many people who offer so many different things. And we have people from California, from Maryland, from Texas, from Ohio, because we're from Otterbein. Like, it's Otterbein's in Westerville, so like there's so many different people and cultures and experiences. So much talent. It's insane. Very intimidating as well, because you have to up everything. And the expectations are higher too, because everyone's on that level. The professors realize that they're putting out Broadway stars, TV stars. If you look up Otterbein alumni, you will notice a number of successful people. I have quite a few, like not quite a few, but a number of friends who have been in TV shows and national tours, and it's just insane. But that's our job. Like, that's what we are trained to do, which means that it is a lot harder. And Otterbein does, I would call it a conservatory style training in a liberal arts setting. So my freshman year, it was 8 a.m. dance, which you had to be there before 8 a.m. to warm up and do things. And like the theater saying, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. If you're late, you're cut. If you're late, you're fired in the real world. But if you're late, you're cut, or you get a B or something. You would get docked grades if you showed up late to anything, even like by a minute. It was noted on the schedule, which was also different. That was also different. There's a lot more leniency in small towns because everyone knows everyone. But anyways, we started at 8 a.m. and then if you were freshman year, you often had to be on some sort of crew for a show. So that could mean that you were in a tech rehearsal that night till like 10 p.m. tops. So that's more than 12 hours of work a day. And then you have classes and homework on top of that. And we had 30 minutes for lunch my freshman year. And that's not normal for like college. I know high schoolers are like, it's very scheduled, very, you have periods of the day you go through. That's not typical in college. I thought it was because I was a musical theater major, but it provided a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges of like, how do I feed myself throughout the day? How do I stay hydrated? We were expected to go to dance, but we were also expected to work out a lot of the days a week. Like they didn't say like, oh, every single day, but they want us to work. They want us to be fit. And you had to practice voice. You had to practice acting. You had to prepare something for the next day. It was nonstop. And eventually it did contribute to me having to step back and transition from musical theater to theater. My body just could not keep up with it anymore. Mentally, could not keep up with it. And some people were accepting and forgiving of that, including professors. And including professors, some people were not. And they had an expectation of real world in an academic setting, which is just very different from the real world. And the real world's always changing. I mean, it's always difficult to like navigate and go through different things, but at times there were unbelievable, unreasonable expectations for these students who probably chose this because it was their favorite thing to do. Mm-hmm. And so frankly, when I graduated from Otterbein, I loved theater. I had a lot of opportunities, but I had to relearn loving to perform, because you go from performing for fun and being recognized for it and being like a sort of local celebrity because like you're like in all the shows and stuff, to you're being graded for everything. And you're already judgmental on yourself. So that's probably the biggest thing that was hard, is to, on top of the judgment you already place on yourself, receive an actual grade. Not easy, not great, not for everybody. And you don't know that until you're there. So that was definitely a major challenge.
It seems to be something that happens where someone might love theater and they have that passion, and then going into it is like a whole different story.
Right? Exactly. It's just, when you're growing up, you're kind of doing it as a hobby. Unless you start as some kid star that's being paid for everything, you're doing school and then theater can be your release from things. That is not how it is. It becomes your career as you want it to be, as what you think it should be, but you don't necessarily realize the toll that it takes and whether or not you can handle that toll. Can you handle that being something that you do every single day? Can your body even handle that? Right. Because it is super physical and not for everybody.
If you could go back in time and to maybe when you, in your high school years, when you were starting to think about going into this and maybe still going into it or not, but what would you feel like you would do differently, or could you bring to the table that you wish, like, oh, if I could just help my students with this, because I didn't necessarily have that?
Advocate for yourself, for what you need. A lot of theater people say, like, leave your baggage at the door. Like, don't bring it into the rehearsal room. But the reality is you will. It's a part of you. And a lot of my professors said, leave your bags at the door, and they brought it right in, and it took it out on all of us. I think there's been a lot of work to be done since that and I'm sure there's been improvement, but it's difficult to hear that and then not see it practiced. And then you're like left saying like, okay, so like what do I do? Like, do I do the same thing? Like, can I also do that? And I would just say, like, if you need to get a drink of water, go get a drink of water. Like, the littlest things can sometimes seem out of reach because of the control that needs to be had in theater. There is such a free space, such a expressive space, so there does need to be a pretty controlling element there, like stage managers being like, okay, this is the time, we need to go on a 5-minute break here. That is very important, very necessary. Directors often have a strict vision. You can't cut your hair if you're casting a show. You have to get approval for everything. And you have to know when you need something in order to be okay. To just say, okay, I need a mental health day. I'm not going to be in class. Other professors will take that. It might be a little bit harder for theater professors because of the early on time is late, that type of ideal that you'll always have to be there. But if you're always like there, you're never here in yourself. So you have to be aware of how you're doing. Therapy, please. Like I think anybody going into like musical theater or theater of any sort, where you're exploring your own emotions, exploring a character's emotions that maybe you've been shoving down, which is something I went through. You need to have somebody, a professional there to help you navigate that process, because otherwise it can be very destructive for yourself and everybody around you. And you will quickly fall out of love with something that meant the world to you. And I don't want that to happen to anybody. So know what you need, or figure out what you need, and be able to say, like, voice that need and advocate for yourself. Please put yourself first, because if you don't put yourself first, who's gonna perform the part? Right. Frankly, you know what I mean? Right. So
yeah, that's so important. And another question I wanted to ask you, the other question was, if someone feels like they're in that place right now where they are burnt out, exhausted, and maybe they have lost their joy.
Yeah.
What would you say to them, and maybe some tips to getting that back?
What I had to do was give myself space from it. Observe. Begin to remember what I loved about it. But the space is the biggest thing, you know, absence makes the heart grow fonder. And even that could mean a couple of days, that could mean a couple of weeks, that could mean a year. For me, I had to drop out of school and then go back. That was for a number of reasons, but I was in such a horrible mental health space, partly because of my inability to advocate for myself and the challenges of the program. But I had, in order to even come back as a theater major, I had to be like, okay, let me just go watch some shows. Let me see the love in others that I used to have. And just allow myself to feel what I'm feeling in the moment, process it, and then recall what meant the world to me then, and how it might be different now. But how it has similar feelings. So I used to I still love performing, and it's so massive, like still a massive part of my life, but Children of Eden will be the first musical I've done in 4 years. And I'm so excited to do that. But I'm also a little scared, because there was such trauma behind that for me. But I had to take that space to not perform for a while, to realize that I miss it and that I do want it back. So that was super important for me to do. And not everyone has the space to do that. But I've had a really good support system like you, who've invited me to perform at different things, invited me to teach here. And that teaching is another way of remembering that I love to perform, but fostering it in others has been a new aspect of loving theater in a way that I didn't realize it was. So that's been that's been a major, like, changing the way I've loved it has also been super helpful.
Right. And sometimes it's to the point of what use is knowledge without it making the difference in somebody else. Right? So, yeah, Shelby. Phenomenal. I love this. Anything else that you want to share about this before we wrap this up?
I would say, like, if you're thinking of going into theater, musical theater, acting, any of that, allow yourself the space to try it. Don't let anything I've said deter you. If you are set on doing this, do it. Explore your life, because it very well could be your path. It still is my path. It's just changed in the way I thought it would be to now. I'm not on Broadway. I'm teaching. So maybe some of my kids will be on Broadway. I don't know. But try it. Take chances. But allow room for growth and change.
Love it. Well, thank you, Shelby.
Yeah,
Thanks
of
for
course.
joining us. And you might, at the time of this era, you might still have openings for,
maybe.
for teaching. I don't know. Shelby busy.
Yes.
We're busy. But of course, a wealth of knowledge to bring, and we're just so grateful that she's here. So grateful that she's just at the core and the center of Red, and just so willing and kind to share all of her experiences. I want you to imagine what it would be like if you had so much focus, so much zen, so much peace, so much calmness, and so much excitement at the same time before a performance. As in, like, you're not getting in your head, you're not freaking out, you're not becoming a basket case, or you're not a hot mess. So if you feel like sometimes that is you, imagine what it would feel like if that wasn't the case, if that wasn't a problem anymore. It would be pretty awesome, right? So what is the first step to that? Working with your mindset. So if this is something that's of interest to you, I recommend going to stopcaringwhattheythink.com. If you're a performer and you want to have more confidence, if you want to get out of your head, these are tips and tricks that I'm offering to you for free. It's a free resource that can help you have more confidence, to manage that anxiety, and just to feel like you can enjoy life again. You can enjoy performing. That's what it's all about, right? So stopcaringwhattheythink.com. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope that you enjoyed it and learned something. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. I post new videos every Wednesday and a new podcast every Friday. Thanks.